Thanks, Buhle. In the lead, several political parties were left wanting when the DA held a press briefing following a federal council meeting outlining the party's coalition strategies. The party made a U-turn on alliance parties, the Freedom Front Plus, Action SA, ACDP and the UDM in their initial talks. Now, the parties are now urging the DA to honour its commitment to keep the ANC out of municipal governments. While the parties have agreed to a coalition with the DA in Tshwane, they are now split on an arrangement on the leadership of Johannesburg. DA leader John Steenhuisen says his party will present mayoral candidates for Tshwane, while the 5 smaller parties are lobbying for Action SA's Herman Mashaba to be the mayoral face of the coalition in Johannesburg. For more on this, we are joined now by political analyst Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast. Dr. Breakfast, very good morning to you. Political parties grappling to finalize these deals. The DA has made a U-turn on the alliance parties, causing a coalition crisis, essentially, that could benefit the ANC. What's your take?
Well, I think in Paul, there is a long-standing history of a bad blood, amongst these political parties. A case in point is the DA and Herman Mashaba, because the DA, I think they are still holding a grudge against him, that he betrayed them. He walked away from the DA in opposition to how Mmusi Maimane was treated. So I think they are holding a view that they cannot trust him as a mayor of Johannesburg. I think these political parties, they need to separate between friendships and strategic alliances. They don't have to be friends to work side by side. I think the first thing that must come to their minds is the issue of service delivery. Coalition formations must be based on politics of accommodation as opposed to a zero-sum game. They must be, based on marriages of inconvenience.
You speak about the long-standing history, I mean the past, Herman Mashaba and the DA, but what the DA has essentially said is that this deal, this plan, will not work without the EFF's buy-in, but they essentially are not prepared to work with the EFF. And we also listened to what EFF leader Julius Malema had to say at the Siyabonga rally in Tembisa yesterday, also speaking to the race elements when it comes to working with the DA and the reasons why the DA is not prepared to work with the EFF. Dr. Breakfast, are you still with me?
Yes, I'm still here. So yeah. I think with regard to the EFF and the DA, again, you remember, Paul, there was a fallout between the two political parties because the DA didn't like the fact that Julius Malema took a swipe at Trollip, who was the mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay. The EFF, on the other hand, also didn't like the fact that the DA did not buy into the whole notion of rolling out the land reform. My view is that most of these differences in Paul are not strategic, they are tactical, and I think these political parties, they need to prioritize the needs of citizens. In order to come up with workable arrangements.
You speak about Herman Mashaba. We know that he had his eyes on becoming the city of Johannesburg mayor once again. He's been very vocal about that. And essentially his response, he says that he feels double-crossed and he doesn't like the fact that there's a breakdown of trust. What does this now mean for his ambitions?
I think all is not lost. If the DA pulls out or walks away, then they will be left with no option but to take the ANC on board. I think, Paul, one of the rules of war is flexibility. Despite the fact that in the beginning, Action SA had said that they will not work alongside the ANC. I think now they have a golden opportunity to re-examine their position and join forces with the ANC, so long as all of them are willing to get the job done and render various services to the inhabitants.
With the clock ticking, Dr. Breakfast, and the DA's sudden U-turn, which has really essentially had a ripple effect on how the smaller parties are now viewing the DA, with talks now regarding Tshwane. They have warned that because of what the DA has done at the very last minute without informing them, they may now reconsider their support for the DA in Tshwane. The indication here would, speaks to the manner in which the other smaller parties have felt that they feel offended by this. In fact, the ACDP's Reverend Kenneth Mesho was saying that it shows a lack of respect and it's broken down trust relations. How then is the ANC going to perhaps benefit from this stance as well, especially looking at the city of Tshwane, the financial problems there, and the financial backing that will be needed in that metro?
Well, I think the situation at the moment, as it stands, it creates a scope for these political parties now to consider taking the ANC on board so that they can form a government, because the deadline is just around the corner, failing which there will be a rerun. But I think, in my opinion, even if the deadline can go past, I can bet my bottom dollar that will not change the political picture if a rerun is to take place. Why? Because the political environment at the moment is fragmented, and it is that fragmentation that gives rise to these coalition negotiations.
What would you say to analysis that a rerun would specifically benefit the ANC when it comes to that process taking place, should the solutions not then be found?
I've got mixed feelings about that. I'll tell you why, because it will depend. If the turnout is high, then I would argue that the ANC might have an upper hand. But if the turnout is low, then the ANC will be on the back foot. But it's not obvious that if there is a rerun, the ANC will be the winner.
With time being, the clock essentially ticking and D-Day approaching, what is your sentiment on the sort of horse trading that should take place to get, you mentioned the people, which is something that we tend to really forget. Well, the political parties tend to forget, and focusing on themselves and their principles and what they want to achieve, instead of really focusing the matter on service delivery issues. What do you think the partnerships would or should look like?
So long as we don't have a piece of legislation that governs how these coalition formations should look like, we are going to have a problem. They will come and go. They will fall apart because there is no independent body to hold them accountable. I think there needs to be a piece of legislation. SALGA can run with that in terms of facilitating those discussions among political parties. I think that is needed. My view is that South Africa doesn't have a long-standing history of coalition formations. The ones that we saw in the beginning were in the early 1900s, 1924, 1933, and after that the National Party rose to prominence, then dominated the political landscape until the ANC had a decline in the early 2000s, until now. So this is a recent phenomenon. No wonder we have these ups and downs.
The EFF, just going back to what we heard yesterday at the Siyabonga rally, they've essentially said that they're on their own. They aren't part of any coalition, And right at the beginning, in fact, after the results were announced, we heard the EFF speaking about going into talks on their terms. And I know that they've been in talks with the ANC and they haven't managed to come to some sort of mutually beneficial agreement. What does it now speak to, the tone of the EFF on the outcome of these local government elections?
I think the EFF should not be too hard on themselves. I think they have done very well. They have improved their electoral performance compared to the percentage that they got in 2016. I got the sense that Julius Malema was very angry when he was making that speech. Maybe that is because there have been some people in some quarters within the EFF who have been calling for him to step down because the party has not done the way it should have. There was a lot of justification from Malema's side, justifying the relationship that the party has with former President Zuma, why the party is, reaching out to foreign nationals, and some of the positions that the party has taken with regard to the demands that the party has made in some of these coalition negotiations. So I think he was, spitting fire, taking a swipe also at people who are critical of him.
The City of Joburg Council meeting is set to take place tomorrow, where political parties are going to essentially present their candidates. What are the challenges that come with that, especially looking at the requisite numbers that are needed to reach the 136 seats to constitute a majority government?
Well, to constitute a government or to have a council that is functional, I think one needs to have 50+1. I think political parties, they really need to make sure that they put their differences aside if they want to have workable power sharing arrangements, and not see this as a golden opportunity for musical chairs, but see it as a golden opportunity to serve the people in those metropolitan municipalities.
Analyst Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast speaking about the musical chairs that's at play when it comes to coalition talks. Of course, D-Day in a few days, and of course we're looking to see the outcome of these talks with the U-turns and some parties as well. Herman Mashaba saying that he feels like he really has been backstabbed. We, of course, do continue building up the conversations around coalitions, but still to come is a very look at the latest sports bulletin. We're standing by as Mamelodi Sundowns women's team is set to arrive, touching down at the OR Tambo International Airport following their CAF Women's Champions League success.